supposed curse that is there says that every alternate generation won't have an heir.
Introducing Royals of Bharat.
A brand new series where we uncover the untold stories of India's royal families. In the first episode, I sit down with Yadavir Wadiyar, the Maharaja and MP of Mysore,
to discuss his legacy, heritage, and modern-day dichotomy of leadership.
Diwali Day, that's Naraka Chaturdashi Day, massacring around 700 to 1,000 Mandya Mayangars. These are just few of the atrocities he committed.
What is the significance of a palace deity?
So our house, that is Mandevru as they say, or family goddess, is Chamundeshwari.
As more and more attention comes to you, sure, there are people who would like to see you fail.
No matter how much you like to believe that this is a beautiful world, there is always elements within it which are looking for you to fall.
Of a palace, what's the most surprising or exacting rituals that most people might not know about?
The last ritual we do is the Shami Puja. That is exactly what Arjuna did before he went to war. He worshipped the Shami tree with all his ayudas next to him. Similarly, we have all our ayudas or weapons that is next to us.
Why is Tipu Sultan still celebrated in parts of Karnataka?
You held a private darbar as an MP. For me, that is a interesting concept because I've just seen it in films. What does a darbar entail? What if India does away with the idea of a palace and its internal rituals and traditions? And your kid says, I don't want to be a part of it. What do you do then?
Well, I would say...
Yo, what is up, my friends? Welcome to another episode of Dostcast. My name is Vinamra Kasana. Today's guest is the Maharaja of Mysore. He is also the sitting MP of Mysore and he's only 32 years old. I was in Karnataka and I spoke to Vikram Sampath, who's written a book on the Wadiyar dynasty. Yaduvir Wadiyar is actually the current member and the custodian of the Mysore state, so I figured it'd be a good idea to speak with him. He's, of course, a very diplomatic, charming MP and a very eloquent fan of history, as you will know from our conversation about the Vijayanagar Empire, our itihas, what it means to be a king in an era when no one believes in kingdoms. And does royalty in India acquire a symbolic status? Does royalty extend beyond the confines of democracy? And does a king think of his constituents all the time? What is the role of a king in a country that has administrators? Complicated questions, some very interesting answers, and perhaps a very honest and a very enriching conversation with a member of the royal family, the Maharaja of Mysore, Yaduvir Wadiyar. And a small announcement, I'm very happy to tell you, Dostcast is now starting a brand new series called The Royals of Bharat. This is episode 1 with the Maharaja of Mysore. And this episode begins in 3, 2, 1. You said there are no titles, but I will still say Honorable MP, if I can use that, Honorable MP, or also Yaduvir. Welcome to my podcast, Dostcast. Thank you for coming here in your own constituency and speaking with me. I have so many questions. Of course, the world is fascinated by contemporary royals. Princely states have been abolished for a very long time, but there is an intrigue in the Indian population, right? So probably a googly that I have for you right off the bat is, how much of your life, or rather your life as an MP, your life as a member of the royal family, as the Maharaja, is intermixed? Do you think of your constituents as voters? Do you think of them as your subjects?
Firstly, thank you so much for having me on your podcast and welcome to my state, Karnataka, and to, of course, my city here in Mysore. It's wonderful to have you and your team here. Well, I think, as you mentioned rightfully so, in 72, the privy purses and the privileges that the princes had were abolished by the then government under Miss Indira Gandhi. And I was born nearly 20 years after that. So I neither knew that era and I was formally brought up in what was a completely democratic India and a fast-changing India in the 90s. The several reforms that were brought up then, it really opened up India as well. So really around the millennium when India started, opening itself up to the globe and we had a completely different perspective from the India that the previous generation had. So I've never really known what it was like, certainly during the Raj, much less, of course, the previous generation, etc. Only we know through the stories we hear from our parents, etc. So when we approach political life, it is as any other politician. These are our voters, and it is by their votes, their blessing, that we come to have or be their representatives, and it is an honor to represent them as well in this temple of democracy that is our parliament in Delhi.
You know, on your website, it says you're the custodian of the state of Mysore, right? A custodian is someone who has custody of a child or a state, something. You're basically a protector, a guardian. You represent, I guess, metaphorically, the idea of the legacy of the royal family. It seems to me it comes with certain burdens and responsibilities and sacrifices that perhaps most citizens, watchers, listeners are unaware of, right? Does the ritualistic element of kingship go away in these modern times? Like, you now have the royal state of Mysore to handle. What does that entail for you?
Again, that's the erstwhile princely state is now essentially all packaged into the living heritage that the palace has, a year-long calendar of traditions that we continue to follow. The scale of it might be a lot smaller than it was in, obviously, during the Raj, or certainly even after after independence as well, when my grandfather continued the traditions. But nonetheless, they are as important. We have never given up our dharmic rights, and that is true for every single Indian. We have the right to practice our religion, and in our homes, we have the right to continue the traditions handed down to us from eons. And we have certainly done so, and will endeavor to do so as long as we are here. And certainly my forerunners will do the same.
Yeah, I was actually reading up about you, and it said that you held a private darbar as an MP. For me, that is a interesting concept because I've just seen it in films. What does a darbar entail? Because there's stuff where there's an N.A. Shastra and a few other rituals which are probably...
Yeah, sure. No, I'd be happy to get into it. The Navratri festivities, that's the 9 days plus, of course, the 10th day, which is Dasra, is a very age-old tradition for the entirety of India. It's not just limited to Mysore. We have celebrations throughout. That is the Autumn Navratri or the Sharan Navratri. Entire India celebrates it. In the south, the empire that was there before Mysore, that is the Vijayanagara Empire, should be rightfully called the Karnataka Empire. Nonetheless, they brought up this festival in a big way because you continued the tradition that was there before. It used to be celebrated before them as well. It's just that they really magnified the scale of it, brought in the elements of what is the armies coming together and celebrating what was a military state as well. And together with that, honoring an age-old tradition and weaving it into what is a military state and what is into at the time, a very strong feudal state and a dharmic state as well. That tradition, after that empire collapsed, was continued by my family in 1610, and we've continued to do so to this very day. The rituals associated with it are very much written down in various texts. Primarily, it's the Kalika Purana and the Markandeya Purana that we reference. There is reference within the Rig Veda as well, and several other texts as well, which all together are collated into our own tradition. And we borrow, of course, the rituals from various elements towards ensuring that the 10-day festivities is symbolically honors Devi and, of course, the fight for good over evil. The N.A. Shastra, whatever you say, is essentially symbolic honoring of the person who does the rituals for the 10 days. It is in a sense, a Shuddhikaran or a purification also. It is a symbolic ritual. It's, of course, maybe prior to this, they would have an actual oil bath, which what that means is an oil Shastra. But now it's an anointment, etc. And then it's followed with several rituals, all of which have symbolic sense towards the worship you're doing. Because the 10 days worship that we do, where you directly worship Devi, you wanted to do it in the sanctity that it is required to do so, because it's a truly age-old tradition, and the purity of it should be maintained throughout. So each and every ritual honors that tradition as well. Every evening there is a darbar wherein we ascend the very old throne that was handed down to us from the Vijayanagara Empire as well. And it symbolizes kingship rather than the individual. It is not you who goes up there, but the custodian of the tradition nowadays. And prior to this, during when we had our rule, it was of course the representative of the people of the state as well. So you took it up on that pedestal. So it goes beyond the individual to actually the role or the capacity to which you are duty bound to follow. So that is what you are trying to honor. And of course, the Simhasana itself is given life. That is the throne as well, is given life for the 9 days. And the Pran Pratishtha is done to that as well. And you become part of the seat, in a sense, when you ascend the throne. So these are all symbolic traditions which have come down. Of course, they belong to another era. But in modern Bharat now, with so many other perspectives and so many other traditions coming down, it's a window into the past in some ways. It is also a continuing of a dharmic tradition which is very age-old. And in no way is it a showing of sort of kingliness or kinglyhood or anything like that. Rather, it is just an honoring of a tradition and continuing of where the various rituals in the tradition which are written down in the Shastra as well.
For me, perhaps the most fascinating part about the Mysore legacy was upon speaking with Vikram and reading his books, I found that unfortunately an older lady cursed the family with saying that every alternate heir or every alternate member of the family, every alternate generation could ascend the throne. Now this is complicated because from what I gather, you ascended the throne very much into your late teens.
Well,
You didn't grow up in the palace per se?
The supposed curse that is there, it says that every alternate generation won't have an heir. And it said, well, again, this is a lot of hearsay, and I don't think much, thought should be really go into such things, because there is a lot of rational arguments for it, and there is an irrational side which you cannot explain.
Right.
The rational argument is these curses that were there, they gained prominence. Whether they were there or not before as folklore, I cannot say. But they gained prominence around the doctrine of lapse. It's not just Mysore state. There are several other states which have examples. As you know, the doctrine of lapse meant you could not adopt. You had to have a biological heir for your,
An unbroken
state
bloodline.
an unbroken line for your state to continue. Otherwise, the East India Company amalgamated your state essentially. So, in view of that, they brought up these sort of curses or gave it prominence. Maybe there were stories, there was folklore. They gave it a lot more of a prominent position within the history, and allowed it to really get into the populace, so that it created this excuse for them to adopt in case they didn't have a biological heir. So I think case in point in Mysore also, this matter was there. And also you have to realize sometimes our royal household which were there, they would always marry within the community. And the biology, it doesn't add up, obviously.
Right.
So all of these points sort of created a convenient history as well. So you can say those things as well, but there's the irrational side of it where it actually, there is a pattern as well.
Yeah.
So there is a side we cannot explain, but my rational points I think should go ahead. And, everything, our prayers to our goddess Chamundeshwari, and we want everything to be set right going forward. That's all.
I'm glad we're in this era where we've done away with incest. We've seen what happens in Game of Thrones. But no, the question remains. So you didn't actually grow up in the royal palace per se.
No, I was adopted in 2015. My mother, that is Srimati Pramoda Devi Wadya, at the time she adopted me in 2015. My late father had passed away, my adoptee father, that is. He had passed away in late 2013. And so in order to continue the traditions, she took essentially a novice who really didn't know very much, except that
You
of
weren't
course,
groomed for palace life or heritage life or preserving the legacy of the
groomed in
family.
sense, I mean, in the case of Mysore state, we've always been fairly free. Even the people who came up before me in the palace, etc., were very much lived a normal life beyond the tradition of what was limited within the palace. Beyond that, lived a very normal life. So there was no such grooming in the sense required for being, royal or any such.
I mean, like what I'm saying is you
such
checked
things.
your phone, you were on Facebook in 2015, just living your life.
Like everybody, I mean, the previous generation also, whatever was modern and relevant to them in
Yeah.
terms of technology or what the mainstream was doing, they were doing that as well in the previous generation.
Did this
So
come
there
as
was
a
never
shock
any
to you?
lift. So obviously, I mean, when you're asked to take up what is an age-old tradition. It was a shock, but it was more, the learning experience for me was more on the dharmic side.
Yeah.
Which was the rituals, understanding the symbolism, why they do it, its importance, and why it should be carried on, and how it plays a part in modern India. Because there's always a question: why do we require all this in modern India? And I think it's more required now than ever before, because we
Why-
need
why would
to
you say
honor-
that?
Well, because in every which way there are influences coming from every which side now, which are eroding Indian culture, which are taking away from what Bharatiya aspiration was, our original civilization, that all the way up till the modern era we've preserved, even through what was the Mughal period, what is the Islamic invasions, the Mughal period, and then the Oriental era with the East India Company, and then the British Empire as well. Bharatiya, what is thought, its ideation, its philosophies, they lived through all of that and were even in many cases strengthened by it, because we faced so much throughout those years. And it's only in modern times that we are really having an attack without really understanding that it hasn't become part of our mainstream now.
Right.
It's now more or less on the fringes, which was part and parcel of what was Indian identity. And I don't reject Western values or Western, thought. Now, it's a great deal of good that comes from it, but I think it needs to be melded into Indian culture and accepted for part of Indian culture rather than it becoming the culture itself.
Yeah.
We need a hybrid going forward, which has to be Bharatiya, and everything that is good and great in the modern world becoming part of that as well, not that becoming the base on which we build the new India.
Yeah, I think, but we are seeing a nationwide resurgence of at least Indic values, if nothing else, where people are moving away from. When I was growing up, I remember having tons of impressions of oral history about my epics and my culture and my mythology, but nothing beyond that. Many of my friends are now moving back to the books. So perhaps because of the legacy of the palace, the access you have to texts and documents, and even in the way we sort of do rituals as Hindus, if you tell your Pandit, they'll often say, because we have no time, let's bypass this ritual. We do it in a very, I don't have time, 30 minutes, let's just get this done. So I'm sure you're used to the exactingness or the precision of the rituals, the way they've been preserved for hundreds of years. What's the for a Maharaja of a palace? What's the most surprising or exacting rituals that most people might not know about?
Well, in many which ways, what you see in the rituals is what happened in our epics, in our traditional history.
Right.
The original documentation of our history, Indian history, how it was intended to be done with the fathers of Indian history. And I'm sure Vikram might have alluded to this with our R.C. Mazumdar Shaw and the other fathers of Indian history. They wanted to document the traditional history of India because at the time, they didn't think our own history was of value. Rather, the traditional history, that is what is in our Puranas, our Itihasas, were more of value. And they continue to document that up till more modern times, where they started documenting current history.
Right.
And so when R.C. Mazumdar Shaw wanted to do it, he wanted to document the traditional history and then the actual recorded history, or what you would say is the more academic history of India. When you do the rituals, like in Dasara now, for example, the last ritual we do is the Shami Puja. That is exactly what Arjuna did before he went to war. So he worshipped the Shami tree with all his ayudas next to him. Similarly, we have all our ayudas or weapons that is next to us. We worship the Shami tree, and this is not for, even in modern times or even then, purely for the sake of victory in war. It's victory in all our endeavors. It is success in every endeavor that you pray for. And it's a success for the resurgence of dharmic values, the success for good over evil that you pray for when you go to the Shami tree. It was true when Arjuna did it. It is as true as when we do it here, and others do it as well when they worship the Shami tree, which there are many communities in and around Mysore, and I'm sure in various parts of India as well. And we continue to do that. So that is a direct link to our traditional history. And you may argue as to whether it happened or not. But the important part is it happened for every single Bharatiya in their hearts. And that continues to be true for all of us. So when we continue this, we honor that tradition as our ancestors did. And we pay homage to that, and we continue to be aware of what an ancient tradition we have in India, what a tremendous value and asset that is. And going forward in preservation of that and honoring of that, it gives us inspiration to build an even greater India.
In the era when you don't have armor-clad soldiers fighting wars and kings taking territories, we've acquired whole new means of doing that now with states and soldiers, and there's no active wars happening in India. But I'm assuming with such a rich heritage, you would never need to read a self-help book, because when people are lost and down for hope, they often look to people who have answers or solutions, right? But when you've got, say, the same ritual that Arjun did, I'm sure it must fill you up with fervor and fill you up with hope and purpose in a way that probably the average Indian could not have access to.
Well, this was done by many people. It's just the scale of it was certainly bigger in the palace. And because at the time you were the representative of the people of your state, you prayed on behalf of the entire state as well. So in today's day, we continue that tradition in honoring our ancestors, and we continue in our Sankalp to have that prayer that it is for the welfare of the state, for the success of the state, that we want to, the entirety of Karnataka and the entirety of India even, that we want to be successful as Bharatiya culture, and we want to be successful as Bharatiyas as well. So that prayer has always been there. And I'm sure everybody in their prayers, it's there in Indian Sankalpa as well. You pray for Rashtra, Rajya, everything else as well. It's automatically there in our Sankalp. While we pray for our families, we put in our own nakshatra and our own whatever, the relevant gotra, etc. We also automatically in the Sankalp pray for it. It's not just because it's a palace tradition. It is there in every single Indian household. It is a fact and parcel of it. Of course, the palace being the representative of the people of the state in another era continues that tradition today towards praying for the entire state. But this is done in every single house in a smaller scale.
Let's dial back 9 years ago. So you have no idea that you're going to ascend the throne. And what does the palace look like? Are you full of intrigue? Are you nervous?
No, I mean, I wasn't that ill-informed as well. We used to come, certainly when I was smaller, a lot more times to the palace.
But as visitors, as tourists, perhaps?
No. I'm very much part of the royal family in sense of we were, my grandmother was my now adoptee father's elder sister. So obviously we were coming, every Dasra we would be there, especially towards the later formative years of my life when I had studies gained their prominence. And so we were constantly there in the palace whenever we required to be. Certainly younger days, a lot more times there. And we were always aware of all the rituals, etc. And we knew the importance of it. But as you said, whenever we went there, it was family coming together, it was festivities, etc. So you didn't know the depth to which the tradition is, the reasoning behind it, the symbolism behind it, the actual history behind it. All of those things, of course, I only got to know in the 9 years later. And I certainly didn't know the dharmic aspects of it, meaning the rituals, how you do it, why you do it, etc. That knowledge had to come then. So while we were certainly part, as the extended family, part of the tradition there, the in-depth understanding and becoming part of the requirement also, on the other hand, of public life as well, because obviously given such a long and storied relation with the state, naturally there is always an expectation for you to be active publicly. And so we continued to do that for the 9 years, both of which took some learning, because no matter how much of an extrovert you are, coming and doing an actual stage program and understanding what to speak, when to speak, etc., and maintaining, your stance on issues, matters in front of press, etc., it takes some learning, and certainly being thrown into the deep end is not really helpful in any
Of course.
shape.
So did the diplomacy and tact, did you sort of develop it there once you understood that you have a big responsibility on your shoulders and anything you say has consequences that at least will go through the state, if not the country?
No. So certainly in Karnataka state, and always whatever has been said from the viewpoint of anyone who's there, like certainly my mother, even up to this day, it has echoes throughout the press and the society, because we rarely say anything. So that is the stance that is there, and there's value to that as well, because
Yeah.
when you speak something, it has tremendous value. And this is not just true of the palace. Any personality who has more reserved and rarely comments, you will see when he or she does comment, it has tremendous value. And this is a principle that, I think we're all in the era of such as your long form podcasts and media.
Sadly, I say
constant,
too much for my own good.
yeah,
I can't help it.
constant media from everywhere, social media, so much content coming everywhere.
Yeah.
I think those who are silent really are saying the right things right now.
Yeah, what's that? Was that film Oppenheimer, where I think Robert Downey Jr. has a dialogue. It's like amateurs seek the sun, power stays in the shadows, and all my introvert friends share it on Instagram. Like that's me.
I don't know about powers being in the shadow, certainly, but I think in the modern world, where all of what is you spoke about here, war and fighting and all of that, and now for good, probably all of the fights happen with your ability to speak and debate. So in such a world, I think it is of tremendous value if when you do, your words have a lot more weight. I think that is of tremendous value, much more so than constantly speaking.
You ascended the throne,
Right.
and then you went back to college.
Yeah,
So this is 2015, probably your last year of college.
last semester.
Yeah. Did you have an Instagram, Facebook presence? Did you post pictures? And did your American friends ask you what it was, and you had to explain that I'm now leading
Yeah,
this?
obviously, certainly. They were. Some of them who were closer were aware. That obviously came from, was part of the extended family of the Mysore family, and so they all certainly naturally fell aware, and they were, happy for me that we're taking up the tradition, etc. And also were aware that obviously now there's some restrictions and some certainly more eyes watching, so he might be certainly change or not change or whatever. So I hope I've been true to whatever I've been before. And US, certainly I had social media presence like everyone else, but I wasn't that bothered about it. I used to be there more for seeing others' content rather than being active myself. So I was never that active, and so now, as soon as I came back, I think it's a great tool to use to build up your personality, your brand in the public, if you choose to do so. And I think it is also a means for you now as a politician as well to reach out and do your duty towards your constituency in terms of letting them know what is the latest and what is happening in the development area for your constituency, and also a means for them to reach out to you very quickly should certain emergencies or situations arise where my office or another representative's office can facilitate some help to them. So I think it's a great tool, and I think if used in the right way, it is of tremendous benefit.
For sure. First of all, congrats on your child.
Thank you.
It's 2050 and times have changed. You're an older man and I'm an older man. Hypothesizing in the future. And what if India does away with the idea of a state, of a what if India does away with the idea of a palace and its internal rituals and traditions? And, your kid says, I don't want to be a part of it. What do you do then?
Well, I would say certainly the way the upbringing of current India, this is like any other household. You have to bring them up in the culture and the palace, make them understand what is the value of the rituals, etc. I myself, not being part of it for so many years, was able to understand the value of it, the importance of continuing it.
Yeah.
And now, under my mother's guidance, I'm able to do it quite enthusiastically, if I might say so. And I enjoy doing it, and I enjoy the the satisfaction it gives in worshipping Devi, or for that matter, continuing the tradition itself. And I'm sure our forerunners will do the same as well. These questions have been asked for eons now, and India has sustained it for eons as well. Every generation has questioned the legitimacy of many things,
Yeah.
but they continue to be a part and parcel of Indian society. because it is absolutely true to the tradition. It is true towards its symbolism, and the outcome of what we are doing, whether ritualistically or the symbolism behind it, is for the essentially the good of the state, and you're praying for the welfare of the state. So in that, I think everybody can understand it and take it forward. As you said, the Indian state that is there, which has already done away with the privileges and purses. So essentially now we're common law citizens. So there is no law that you have that I don't have. So you will have to judge us by common law. So if they're going to take away anything from me, they have to take it away from you as well. So in front of
Fair.
common law, we are all the same. And we continue our traditions as you would in your own house as well.
I have two small instances. I have a friend who is friends or works very closely with a certain chief minister of a specific state. Not going to go into too much details, but he mentioned that this man is so private, despite being in public life all day and giving speeches all day and rousing up his supporters and asking for votes and loving his constituents, that he does not even tell his children what he's thinking, right? And then, drawing a parallel, many people will know about Marcus Aurelius, the famous Roman emperor. He wrote a book that is now has become refashioned into a self-help bestseller called, by Ryan Holiday, the writer. And in that book, he talks about the difficulties, the repetitions of being king, where his state, he's fighting wars on many fronts. His children are not listening to him. And from that book, you realize you've got all of the Roman Empire's responsibilities on your shoulders. And it's so hard that you can't speak freely anymore. That the consequences of being a king, or for that matter in modern times, the consequences of being a state administrator are perhaps so severe and so taxing that a man suppresses himself and shuts up and perhaps finds solace in, the comfort of a page or with trusted advisors. So with this ascension and then becoming MP, how have you sort of dealt with this?
Well, there are two facets to it. One, obviously, when we came to after adoption, and then the etc. happened after that, there was obviously a public expectation for you to be part of society and part of societal gatherings, etc. And they called you in that viewpoint, but you were still a private citizen. But nonetheless, to keep up, the tradition and the expectation that is there in our Kannada community, and generally the state of Karnataka as well, and then outside that, the relations you have across India, you generally modeled yourself in a certain way and you showed yourself in a certain way. But that doesn't mean it wasn't true to your personality as well. So we continue to do that. Now in the role of officially a person's representative, and you have to, of course, maintain the dignity of the role as well. I think we as MPs or any other public representative are do much more good in the sense that if we uphold certain values and conduct ourselves in certain manners, we bring respect to the post. I need not tell you, there is nobody who has a great opinion of a politician. There might be a great opinion of a singular politician, but
Sure.
if you ask about politicians in general, I doubt anybody
The
has a
class
good
is
opinion.
condemned, the individual is spared. Yeah.
Nobody has a good opinion, myself included. So that is the way it is.
Yeah.
So if you want your the value to be held to any post, and even Maharajas or kings is a political post. At the end of the day, it is political as well. You have to conduct yourselves in a manner that is befitting the post as well. So I think we do better for ourselves, better for our community, and better for the people we represent if we conduct ourselves in better manners. And I think it will benefit India tremendously if we do so in the way that we refrain from getting into the political life of others and ourselves, the personal life, of others and ourselves in the public domain. I think what is personal should be kept personal, whether it is even social media or now political life, or even prior to that as a private citizen, but being even for yourself that matter now much more publicly visible. And it is always better that side of your life is kept to itself. because you need that privacy, and it allows you to conduct yourself in a manner that is different outside and be free inside as well. So you have a personal space. It allows you whatever self-help or all of those things as well. I think it helps to that aspect as well. And I've always kept that side of my life completely away from public life, whether in a whether in a private capacity as a private citizen, or now as a public representative as well.
So you're saying you can not let your private trepidations or your turmoil show on your face and do your job as a...
I don't think that should have any consequence on your public life. Emotion has a great part to play in decision making, no doubt about it. But at the end of the day, your public life should be, as a representative, certainly benefiting the people, whatever your role demands and whatever your role can give as development towards your constituency or facilities or help towards the constituents in your constituency, you should do. But there is no need to bring the private part of your life towards enhancing that or towards adding value to that. I don't think it really benefits anybody, truly.
I'm sure you're no stranger to the odd story about, not the odd, the average story about someone from a king's family being poisoned by food, by traitors in the midst. Of course, this is the stuff of legend. This is how movies are made. This is the stuff of books. But when you go to public life, and in my case, I would say in public facing life with little consequence, because I don't have constituents, I have viewers, there are always traitorous people amongst our midst. Treachery, traitors, and all of that. And as more and more attention comes to you, I'm sure there are people who would like to see you fail. Did that dial up when you became MP?
Oh, certainly. It was there before as well.
Why is that?
Yeah, it's always there because, no matter how much you like to believe that this is a beautiful world, there is always elements within it which are looking for you to fall. They want to catch you stumble so they can make fun, and they certainly will enjoy it when you fall as well. But I think, that's also value towards building yourself up. The hate you receive, the criticism you receive in certain cases, if received in the right way, adds value towards building your own character and your own identity as well. And certainly in political life as well, there is value towards listening to your critics. I think you should give it the due amount of attention it deserves. But after that, you should certainly have the ability to decide when it is being done to deride you rather than when it is being done to help you as well. So these are things that you will obviously experience will allow you to do. Wisdom will, as you age, will give you the ability to analyze these situations. But we always have logic with us immediately towards applying this to analyze what we can do immediately. And I've had my fair share of half-truths being spewed at election time, the usual stuff. He won't be accessible, lives in an ivory tower, there's no way he'll know what the common man's aspiration is, etc., etc. And fair enough, it's part of the, fight towards getting to be people's representatives now. And history, if it has taught us anything, the path towards getting, in today's world, of course, becoming more and more, coming up higher as people's representatives, growing in stature as people's representatives. Before, of course, in the corridors that were towards power, there's always treachery, there is always half-truths being spewed, there is always political angles. And that hasn't changed. Thankfully now, we don't know, but thankfully now, I don't think the use of poison and, hiding, cutthroats or whatever there aren't there anymore. But certainly they come in other forms and can be as damaging, at least mentally, as they were then physically.
Are you often, especially in state politics in Karnataka, are you often dismissed for your age? Because you're a young man.
I think the age factor in India, there are a lot of young MPs, and I think because India is so young, I think younger MPs
For context, you're 32 years old.
Yes, I'm 32, but obviously no 32-year-old, in some cases, rightfully so, aren't given their due credit. I'm not me in particular, but we've as youngsters. I mean, I remember if 2019 or even before that, the previous election cycle, we're relatively younger and didn't have the maturity to understand these situations. And if you analyze yourself, you know that it requires a certain age for you to be able to take on the situation around you, understand and how to mitigate things or how to take advantage of political situations, etc. That takes time and age. And I think certainly a younger audience in India helps us in the sense that they listen to the youth. When you have younger representatives, it seems like there is someone who is on the same playing field, is on the same level as you. But I mean, there's a great deal of advice that our elders give us, which we should listen and we should take forward. And when they are giving you advice, or if they don't take you seriously at some point in time, it's up to you to make sure you make the relevant points or the relevant discussions towards ensuring they take you seriously. And I think it's a matter of trying. It's always the case throughout history that your elders are going to dismiss you.
How is it that you're so well read and well spoken? Were you
I
like
think
a
I have
book
a great
nerd growing
deal
up?
No, I have a great deal to learn ahead of me. I think in many ways being a fan of history has helped because one, you get the reading done, so you will always learn. I think together with that, there's many lessons from history, and you can learn a great deal from that. Alongside that, I am not by any means a philosopher, neither am I in any which way even well versed in any of our philosophies. But I think getting into understanding it or starting to understand it builds a great base for you towards any career choice you make, because it allows you some stability and something to lean on in tough times as well. So I think that aspect of it has tremendously helped in terms of maturing.
Sure.
In terms of perhaps while you cannot certainly grow any or become older any faster, you can have a mature viewpoint and a mature perspective by having a greater understanding of what it means to be within this society, what it means to be a public representative from that history as well, because our texts have shown that many which ways of political life as well. So I think that aspect of it, you can certainly, while you cannot age faster, and certainly we don't want to age faster as well, you can mature in other ways. And I think that aspect of it in terms of enhancing our knowledge helps a lot.
What's your favorite part of history? Like, is there a specific period you like? People have oddly specific periods that they dedicate their entire lives to obsessing over.
In the perspective of Karnataka history?
No, generally global history.
No, so global history, certainly we'll get into that, but in the perspective purely of Karnataka history, the Vijayanagara Empire, or I said the Karnataka Empire, has always thrilled me to no extent. I have to, pretty much every year, I go down to Hampi, which is formerly the Vijayanagara, the capital. But it's such a tremendous history in itself.
Great rock climbing there, by the way.
Yeah, that parcel of it is part and parcel of it as well. But it's been a site of pilgrimage for thousands of years. It was only 300 years an empire, which it became famous for. But it has references to our traditional history from all the four yugas, and then it has continues to be to this day a pilgrimage site as well.
Yeah.
So that's the strange thing about it. And then so that perhaps for our Karnataka history, that is.
And it looks very prehistoric. It looks like it's straight out of the Flintstones, where perhaps dinosaurs resided, because the way the boulders are structured in pyramids.
Well, the entire Deccan itself geologically is over 100 million years old, because the volcanic eruptions that happened post, of course, there's something like I might be completely off base about this, but there's something like thousands of years of volcanic eruptions that formed the Deccan Plateau, and it has remained unchanged for many, many years, essentially. So the Deccan Plateau is one of the most stable areas. So what happens is nothing much has changed from prehistoric times till now.
No seismic shifts.
No, there's hardly been any earthquakes, etc. For the vast majority of the Deccan. The plates that you have the shift, obviously Gujarat had its earthquake, and then the Himalayan belt has earthquakes all the time. So this has been a relatively more stable area. So obviously, from a geological perspective, our entire Deccan looks a lot more prehistoric in that sense. And certainly Hampi, and then if you go even further up north to Badami, etc., it looks, as if it's from another time itself.
About 2 years ago, mostly in the pandemic, I extensively was part of many rock climbing communities, mostly in the Gurgaon Faridabad area. But they used to routinely come to Hampi and Badami to do rock climbing. And I remember coming to Hampi in 2016 and being fascinated by just walking alongside Tungabhadra River and seeing that it looked very much like any second I would encounter a crocodile or a rhinoceros. I'm not sure if they're indigenous to the area, but it's the premonition I had about how ancient it looked.
Well, there's certainly crocodiles, no rhinos here. They're only in Kaziranga. But yeah, that's where the Vanaras stayed. That's where Ram met Anjaneya or Hanuman, and he met Sugriv as well. He battled Vali. When Sugriv battled Vali, he shot Vali a little north of there. And so all these stories are right there. And you have the birthplace of Hanuman there in Anjanadri Hill. You can trek up there. It's less of a rock climb now because there's steps all the way to the top.
Yes, I actually took the horrible way up. I didn't know that you could climb through the steps.
So you can climb through steps and go up. There are many references. Ram sat for his Chaturmas on the other side of the river now. That is on the Hampi side of the river as well. So there are all these references there. It is so Rama spent a lot of time there, Rama and Lakshmana, in their search for Sita. And there are a lot of references, including the cave where he worshipped a Shivling as well, all of which are there up to this day, and worship continues there as well. So these things are all there. It's a beautiful area. Both, I mean, you can go from the perspective of history to see what was formerly one of the greatest empires that India had. You can go in the term of being a Ram Bhakt and part of his route towards Lanka and back. You can go to the perspective of being a Shiv Bhakt as well. You have Virupaksha, where Shiva was awoken from his samadhi. That is why Virupaksha, the third eye, essentially opening of the third eye. So that's where he was woken up, and that temple continues to be an active temple to this day. You can go there purely for, as you said, rock climbing as well, just to enjoy the geography, enjoy the space, nature. It has tremendous natural reserves as well around it, Daroji, etc. So it is one of the most beautiful places.
Was there ever a Tenali Rama, or is it that just fiction? Because my mom still has it, 101 Tales of Tenali Raman and Krishna Deva Raya. So I wasn't sure.
Krishna Deva Raya is certainly very true.
Yeah.
He had very able ministers around him. Otherwise, it obviously wouldn't be possible to rule such a vast empire so successfully. I mean, obviously, a lot of Amar Chitraktha, there is a lot of folklore and a lot of hyperbole added in.
Yeah.
But I'm sure it's rooted somewhere in the sense of, I mean, even Akbar and Birbal comics.
No, he was called Birbal of the South, so I was confused if this is actually true here.
See, even the Akbar and Birbal in the Amar Chitraktha is greatly exaggerated with a lot of hyperbole.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's nice to have those comics while growing up. I think it is the door that opens up you up to getting into legitimate history and understanding real history.
When we go to world history, what are some periods that fascinate you? Perhaps, like, if you were to make it more tangible, like any books that have shaped the way you view the world.
I think certainly the Roman Empire is always amazing to see. Just the amount of time it was relevant surpasses pretty much any other empire. I mean, obviously our traditional history has very many things, but in modern recorded history, which academicians want to give for sources and proofs for the sake of that argument, it is and just as a general history buff as well.
Right.
It's just fascinating to see the way they ruled and the extent of the empire they ruled, for how long they ruled. Egypt, very fascinating. And the thing about history, there's so much in the unknown. You have this people coming up with the younger dress and all of those other theories, where there was supposedly a very culturally advanced civilization that was completely wiped out at the end of the last ice age. And the remnants of that is what we see in our traditional histories all over, and in references across the world, the traditional histories across the world. So all of those things very fascinating. When I was in US, the indigenous, that is the Native American history, was extremely fascinating as well, all the way down to South America as well. It's just amazing to see, and for us that's exotic, right? Because this is home for us,
Right.
So, but to know their history, the at sometimes very violent history of theirs, was
And it's very recent as well.
very recent as well, very recent as well. And South Americas with, the Aztecs, the Incas, the Mexican great empires that were there as well. It's a fascinating history, and in of itself. So I mean, I don't world history wise. I mean, you can pick and choose. There's never any end to it. So I enjoy all of them pretty much. But if you're to single it out, probably the Roman Empire, just for the sake of the extent of it and the many different periods there.
There was the trend has just died down now, but there was a trend on Twitter which, you've seen those memes where like a man and a woman are like lying on a bed and they're both looking on the other directions, and the woman is saying, "I wonder he must be thinking about other women," right? That famous meme.
Yes.
But then the dude always has a thought bubble that says he's actually thinking about the Roman Empire. And there was, even Elon Musk tweeted this, he spent all day thinking about the Roman Empire. And it became a very popular masculine movement for a while. Because to a lot of men now, that kind of a military prowess and might is a very inspirational symbol about just what you could do, and you could rule with such sophistication, with such a, like a proto-democracy.
Well, it's funny you say that, because there is a meme locally here in Karnataka which does the same thing about the Vijayanagara Empire.
Okay.
So there's essentially the girl again is like, I think he's thinking about other girls.
Yeah.
And the boy is like thinking about if Vijayanagara Empire had lasted, how great it would have been. Here locally in Karnataka. So you can see, I think it's just fascinating to see, and it's the window into the past in one way that we want to see, and it's the aspiration of in general mankind towards building great empires, towards building a great society, and giving, I think, a great environment and a great state to live in. And I think that always is fascinating. And I think these empires, they're always a window into the past, because now all we see are the ruins.
Yeah.
And the many digital recreations and all that, which are great, but you always wonder what it could have been, because of the might and the structure that was there, and the way things were. But all the grass is always greener on the other side as well.
Of course. Well, what do you do for fun, Yaduvir?
Now there's no.
Now there's
basically
no fun.
time. There's
Now there's no fun.
There's no fun now. Beyond, my house is a car now, so that is we're always.
Your
on the
house is
road.
a car?
Yeah, I'm always on the road. That's my home now, the car.
Yeah.
So we're always on the road. Or I should say that my home is the highway now. So we're always on the road, going up and down. My constituency end to end is about 4 hours. So Kadkola all the way to Sampaje, which is actually near the coastal constituency of Mangalore or Dakshin Kannada. Entirety of Kodagu is bigger than the other half of my constituency itself. And, hilly region going up and down as well. Yesterday, the entire day I was there. So you have this, it's a absolutely amazing constituency to be, because you have a cultural capital in Mysore, which culturally and then educationally is no less advanced than Bangalore. You have every which kind of personality here who is capable of understanding modern India as much as Bangalore. You have 2 constituencies which are primarily rural. Part of the third is part of Mysore city now, which were more or less forests till the 70s, 80s. So they are quite backward in terms of development. And then you have the 2 constituencies of Kodagu, which, I don't want to bring down their problems by any means, but are relatively landed and well off compared to the rest of India. But they have, of course, a lot of acute problems there as well, in terms of having issues with electricity, roads, etc., because of naturally it being a hilly region and part of the Western Ghats as well. But they are also in many ways as educated and as culturally advanced as a city. in Kodagu as well. So you have these challenges, unique cultures. Kodava, and Kodagu in general, all the communities within Kodagu have a very old history. Predates probably even Bharatiya culture because it comes from a natural observance of worshipping nature. So you have this tremendous history there. Piriyapatna and Hunsur themselves is a tobacco growing belt, so that's a unique challenge because that's a sin good on one side, and you have to balance it out with farmers having to grow what is a
course, to
commercial
fend for
crop,
themselves, yeah.
commercial crop in very high demand. And then you have Mysore city, which has its culture and its heritage, which needs to be preserved, but also aspires to be very much part of modern India and have every facility of a modern state as well. So you have all these challenges ahead.
How do
but,
we
it's
move
fun.
past the Mysore Pak stereotype about the state where people are like, oh, Mysore Pak. It's like saying go abroad and you say India, oh, curry. So I think, of course, they will watch this
you have
podcast.
no, certainly Mysore Pak has its advantages. It has to be marketed the right way. It's a tremendous product, and I think if given the right marketing, can benefit Mysore traders and this thing as an aside. But beyond that, I think Mysore has to do a better deal of selling itself in terms of its heritage. We need the economy to be built around that, the tourism to be built around the heritage of Mysore.
Yeah.
That is what will allow it to be preserved.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, anything that has to be preserved has to have an economic incentive. So that is the angle which we want to go ahead with. And certainly there are innumerable models all around us which are been successful. And we spoke about the Roman Empire, we spoke about Vijayanagara. All of the economies are based around tourism of that era. And certainly Mysore state can, being the erstwhile Mysore state, can be preserved. Its built heritage, its tangible heritage and intangible heritage can be preserved by building the economy around it.
You're the sitting MP of Mysuru. What's your goals? What's your threats? Who's someone, a major problem that perhaps is standing in your way, and what do you plan to accomplish here in the duration of your term? I'm sorry if this sounds like a LinkedIn McKinsey question.
No, I don't really see anything really as a problem. I think there are challenges ahead. I've already mentioned we want to maintain the heritage of the city, we want to maintain the look of the city, especially if you come to the interior, what is now the older part of the city. What was the modern city of Mysore in the 1920s is now the older part of the city. The look and feel of it, the charm of it, and what it represents in terms of the architectural history, because these buildings were built in different periods of times when the state had good revenues, when you came to the Second World War and you saw the dumbing down of it, and then post-independence and the socialist era. All of that is reflected in the architecture, and you want to preserve all those aspects as well. Going ahead into the rural constituencies, you want to have development there, you want to bring them up, you want them to have facilities that are commensurate with the city of Mysore, the city of Bangalore, but also preserving the rural landscape of India is key as well. The issue we have now in India is I can take you to any town and it looks like any other town. There is no unique characteristic which was there before.
It's become homogeneous.
Yeah, you have the same RCC buildings, the same signage everywhere, and waste being thrown all over. So our towns have gone from what used to be charming, and they are, if you move past the main street, charming little quaint little villages or quaint little townships, to now what is the main street being largely we've done this to ourselves, largely being perceived as where there's waste, where there's not particularly places we want to be passing through while driving. It's just sort of a headache while we're trying to get to the destination we're getting to. All of these things have to be changed. If the town economy and the rural economy needs to come up, that identity also has to be preserved. And so development there also has to happen organically. You want the farmers to increase their income. You want them to be benefited and have a stable livelihood, not every year depending on the fluctuations of pricings, etc. You want them to have welfare as well. And in a place like Kodagu, coffee growing, huge estates, you want them to have every infrastructure possible to make it convenient for them to move around. You want them to have less man-animal conflict, but at the same time you want to preserve the wildlife that we have, the natural heritage we have as well. So these are the challenges ahead. And I think there are many innovative solutions which we can bring to the table. And certainly if there are political speed bumps on the way, we will overcome them and move forward.
Does the state export a lot of coffee?
Certainly Karnataka is one of the highest, if not the...
No, I know what Chikmagalur, I'm saying
In Karnataka is something like 70% of the coffee in India is from Karnataka.
Okay.
And in that, I think 70% is Kodagu coffee, Cool coffee. So it is a huge amount of coffee that comes out of Kodagu. You have both Arabica and now even Robusta being grown, which is creating an issue with crop patterns, etc. Cool coffee is a very old thing. It started from the British era, essentially.
Yeah.
And it continues to be a part and parcel of life here, and it is one of the heritage products of our state.
I'm so glad that specialty cafes like Blue Tokai and everyone else came around during the pandemic because it allowed Indians to get acquainted with nice coffee. Usually they were used to FMCG, Kirana store kind of coffee, instant coffee, which I'm sure you guys have enjoyed it here because you've had it indigenously.
Well,
But,
yeah, there's a saying that if you cross the Tungabhadra, you don't get good coffee in India. For us, because we have our South Indian filter coffee. So we perfected the coffee in the way it should be drunk for Indians, because obviously the direct beans and the best produce went abroad. It still does to a great extent. What remains here is the lower quality bean, and that was mixed with chicory to create the blend that we get
Correct.
in filter coffee. So this area and certainly certain parts of the south have perfected the way of making a good South Indian filter coffee. You cross the Tungabhadra and even personal experience, you don't get this.
Right.
Because there is obviously it's a tea drinking belt. North India certainly is more or less drinks tea rather than coffee. But now, of course, South Indian filter coffee via chains and brands, etc., it's coming up everywhere else, and they're doing well.
So Sapko Coffee in
And,
Mumbai sells Sif on the rocks. They call it Sif.
No, of course, now espresso coffee now is all the rage and all the trend. I mean, the third wave of coffee.
Right.
You had the first wave, and then you had the second in the Starbucks and
Dude,
the
we
cafe
just got the
culture.
third wave. We
And
didn't
the
get
third
the
wave.
first or second wave in the north.
Yeah, India's automatically gone into the third wave of coffee in many which ways. So coffee drinking culture and all that is growing, and it's a big economy. It's a big economy, and it'll create a lot of good jobs going forward. And certainly now we are getting to enjoy the benefits of our own produce as well. So that's also a great movement.
Yeah, I think that's very important because I was speaking with someone at Araku Coffee a few years ago, and they said we sell our coffee 3 or 4x at the price in France, and I was like, that's very strange. I said, why do you do that? He said, because we sell the best beans there, and if we have discerning consumers, we should have the best coffee here, because I know many friends who will drop a dime just to have exquisite coffee and have their Chemex and pour overs and all of those things.
That Chemex, pour over and all of that, it's in this room, both of us talking about it is fine. We both have that whatever exposure, but that's, again, if you take the majority of India, that's such a small percentage, it's absolutely irrelevant.
Yeah.
The vast majority of Indians still don't have access to that fine coffee, and certainly it's more mainstream there, so obviously you're going to get a better price. And naturally, big believer that you allow the market to dictate these sort of things itself. So naturally that goes abroad and is sold for benefit. Again, this helps again to preserve the South Indian filter coffee, so I have no problem at all with it. I think it's great. We have all of these cultures coming together. You have city life, you can enjoy that. You can come into Mysore and have a lovely
Yeah, I
South
got a
Indian
nice
filter
haircut and a
coffee.
beard yesterday.
Nice South Indian filter coffee here, and have your local, more desi style food here in Mysore. And you can go to Bangalore and have all the, Japanese or whatever you fancy there as well. So all that's coming together, and it's wonderful. And we just endeavor to build it on the base of what is our Bharatiya civilizational aspirations.
Cool. Thank you so much, Yaduvir, for your time and for speaking with me today and for covering as the widest possible topics we could in this
Thank you.
hour. Where can people follow your work? I know you're notoriously private, so
I know political pages are as apparent. This thing, I think Instagram is at Yaduvir Wadir official, and on X I'm at Yaduvir Wadir.
Cool.
So those are the two spaces that I'm most active in, or rather my social media team is active rather.
right, of course. Where can one last thing, I guess, because you mentioned history. If there was maybe 2 or 3 books you could recommend to my, because there are tons of people in my podcast audiences who love history.
I would recommend, so since we spoke so much about Vijayanagar, just to give you one book. It's a coffee table book, but it's truly really in depth in terms of history is the book by Pierre Sylvain Filiosa and Vasundhara Filiosa. Vasundhara is a local Mysorean, very elderly lady. She married a Frenchman, both of whom have spent extensive amount of time in Vijayanagar. Their coffee table book, which they release, it's only available. It's tough to get a hold of it, but if you can, that is the best history I think of Vijayanagar that is there. Our own Mysore history, you needn't go further than Vikram Sampath itself. He's his original book, the Mysore book is there. If any other book on history which I would recommend, right off the top of my head, would be
It's okay if we've just got two.
no,
It's
but
fine.
I've let me get back. Perhaps I'll send that to you on another note. But I
Sure,
haven't got it
so you
right
can
on top of
find
my
the
head.
third.
But these two books, in terms of Karnataka history, for Vijayanagara and for my own family, are the most relevant. Certainly, there are many other books that give good insight. Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan. Let me say that the entire history of India. It's a very tough read, not the easiest thing to
Bharati
do.
Vidya Bhavan?
Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan publishes the entire 16 volume of R.C. Mazumdar Shaw's History of India.
Okay.
If you can get your hands on that, nothing like it. I have not read entire 16 volumes, but to reference, to get
Okay.
into it, to come in all the way from earliest Indian history sources to all the way towards independence and the various movements that made up the Indian independence movement are all documented in that book.
There
In
you
the
have it, my
16
friends.
volume,
That is all the book recommendations that you would get out of him. And this was Those Casts with Yaduvir Warrior. And we will see you all on the next episode. Don't forget to subscribe. Take care. Bye bye. Sayonara. Jai Hind. Awesome. Thank you so much for once again inviting us to your palatial home, also known as a palace. What do we see here? What are these? What are these red minarets? Can we call them minarets?
Well, it's all aspects of Indo-Saracenic architecture, which is what defines the style of architecture for the Mysore Palace. It blends what is Dravidian architecture or architecture of the south alongside certain Western elements, certain Rajput elements, and certainly some Mughal elements as well, all coming together in what is a uniquely dharmic Vastu. So all of it has been put together, and that's what forms the Mysore Palace as you see it today. Of course, it's undergone various renovations. We've had the good fortune of having a fairly good state with great revenues, and as they increased, so did we had the funds to eventually redo the palace. Unfortunately, the original palace, which was there in up to the late 1800s, burnt down due to a fire. And at that time, the entirety of the city, or a vast majority of the city, lived within the fort.
Right.
And so they were all moved out because obviously that structure was largely of wood. And then subsequently, we were able to build up the palace as it is today from a long period of time, over 40 years. They're continually building and renovating whenever we had the funds to do so.
You come here to chill, relax.
No, I mean, we've come here mainly for interviews.
Okay,
Relax
okay.
on top because it's largely all public spaces. It's a little down today.
Right.
But yeah, we do mornings, I think, to come some certain times for walks, especially if my son is there. We do the entire palace. But when there are guests now, as is during the tourism season and certainly throughout the year now, we're rivaling the Taj Mahal in terms of guests at the Mysore Palace. So we don't generally get out or rather walk around too much. Post 6 o'clock when the palace is closed again, you can go for a walk.
I must ask you about, is that a temple?
Yes, so there's around 18 to 21 different shrines around the palace. This is the Bhuneshwari temple, which was built around 56, 57 after the state of Karnataka. All of the Kannada-speaking areas were merged together. Then the state decided that Bhuneshwari will be the state deity. As per that, my grandfather had this temple built at that time.
What is the significance of a palace deity or a palace goddess rather?
So our house, that is Mandevru, as they say, or family goddess, is Chamundeshwari, Kul Devi as well. And she sits atop the hill. She is worshipped there. this is, of course, the state. Bhuneshwari was made the state goddess after 56, 58, when the state was, all the Kannada speaking areas were merged as per the local languages. They reorganized the states at the time. So this was there. It is very significant because your Kuldevi is who you prayed to for every success in your endeavors, your, the entire state, etc., for their welfare was prayed to the Kuldevi. And the Navratri tradition as well is based around worship of Chamundeshwari Devi as well.
Amazing.
It's quite old. There are temples here which are around 1,000 years old.
Where?
So behind,
one.
not this one.
Yeah.
This is 56, as I said earlier. There's Lakshmi Ramana Swami, which is at the back, which is around 1,000 years old. That temple is the earliest possible record, because there's an inscription there as well that this place has been inhabited for at least 1,000 years. Subsequently, I'm sure various forts were built around here, and at various times they were demolished and rebuilt. No doubt, our capital was in Srirangpatna for the longest time, from 1610 to 1799. After which, of course, the defeat of Tipu, that was made into a cantonment, a garrison for the British, and we moved back to Mysore, which is our original home here. And while that was the seat of the viceroy during the Vijayanagara Empire, continued to be an important part because they're naturally fortified by the river on both sides. Of course, in modern times, this was the capital, and from 1799, we were able to develop the city of Mysore. The temples, etc., managed to live through a lot of the, vicissitudes of time. But the living quarters were demolished and rebuilt many a time.
Why is Tipu Sultan still celebrated in parts of Karnataka? I know he's a divisive figure now. There used to be a Tipu Jayanti not too long ago.
Well, I think he's been celebrated by this Congress government, and prior to that by the Muslim community as a hero of theirs. But in the viewpoint of what is today a secular India that stands for the pluralistic value that India has had from its birth, from its inception, I think he's a very contentious figure, to say at the least. His recorded history itself, according to his own records, the Kodagu, which I represent, has seen very many atrocities from him, over 40 attacks from his father and him, all during which, there was a lot of devastation, enslaving of people, forced conversion. He also was famous for, on Diwali day, that's Naraka Chaturdashi day, massacring around 700 to 1,000 Mandya Mayangars here in Srirangpatna, going towards Melkote. So these are just few of the atrocities he committed. Haven't even spoken about all of that which happened in the Malabar coast by his father and him, all of which were targeted towards the Hindu community at large. He had a specific agenda as well towards conversion, towards creating an Islamic caliphate as he wanted to. All of these, of course, do not lend itself well in the modern India that we are trying to build towards allowing everyone within the Indian demographic, their due respect. When a certain person has created so much disharmony and so much atrocities towards one community in particular, I think you need to treat him as a historical figure and understand that in the context of that history, he did what he had, I suppose, what he was taught to do or what he believed was right. But I think celebrating him in the modern era and is the wrong message towards community building and towards building a cohesive community.
Wonderful. That's all of my questions as far as this is concerned. We're obviously going to take a tour of the palace, thanks to the kind hospitality of Yaduveer, of course. No, of course, I know your name. I was going to say, I always think, what title should I give you now? That is why I keep replacing it. Yaduveer is perfectly fine. Okay. Wonderful. Well, we're in the gardens. What are these gardens called, Yaduveer?
Nothing else. It's
just the gardens.
Well, they used to hoist the flag. Yes, it's just called the flag garden, or this is just the North Garden. Nothing in particular.
Earlier you said Indo-Saracenian architecture. What's Saracenian?
Indo-Saracenic. So it's a blend of Indian and, of course, Western, and alongside that, the Mughal and Rajput traditions as well.
Okay.
So it was given the Indo-Saracenic name.
Wonderful. Cool. Thank you so much once again.
Not at all. My pleasure.
Cheers. Yeah.